Here's what's coming up on today's show.
The panic arises. I'm losing all my money. I'm not going to be able to make it. Everything that I work for is going away. So much negative information, and it just gets people in fear mode. And so they react emotionally. If you design your investment approach properly, you don't need to be afraid.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
We're going to talk about some emotions in investing this week and how we can maybe illustrate how some of these things get in our way. And so let's talk about greed. Let's kick it off with the big one. That's always the elephant in the room, right? We all have it. We all got a touch of it. Doesn't mean you're a bad person if you're greedy, but you got to be careful. Don't let it get too much of you there.
Well, you say that. Right now it seems to be prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
People are seeing the returns come back. Just remember what you lost in 2022. You've just barely made any money from the end of 2021, but you got to think about it because, there are times when you probably should not be greedy. What did Warren Buffett say? When people are greedy, you should be fearful.
That's right. Yep.
And when people are fearful, you should be greedy. Well, think it through.
Yeah.
It also rhymes with need. Greed, right? So first, through doing a thorough set of analysis, we should determine how much is needed. You see how I transitioned?
Yes,
to that?
you did.
Yes, right. How much is needed to allow us to accomplish the different financial goals that you have. If you've approached it this way, it's going to be better than just being greedy. You should have goals for income, goals for philanthropy, goals for legacy. So be sure that you have looked through the lens of my planning part first before you just get excited about what's happening in a stock market and say, hey, I missed out, so I gotta turn the gas burners on and get rolling here. Greed is a deceptive thing. When someone really wants to push the envelope and take risks beyond really what they need, well, that's greed. When you get too greedy with it, sometimes you really pay a price too. Many times, greed comes from a misunderstanding of returns. Now, I'm going to go to our friends at Vanguard. Vanguard is our measuring benchmark, and they have a portfolio called CRSP. I think that's how it goes. And their 10-year average return is 8.59%. That's their 100% stock portfolio, 8.59. And that's as of the end of last year. So risk doesn't mean consistently big returns. It means volatility will be higher for somebody that's invested, all equity, if you will, rather than somebody that maybe tempers that a little bit. So talking about volatility, at the end of 2023, the 1-year return was 21.56. But if you look at their 3-year return, it was 5.87. The reason why I'm throwing these numbers out is what happened? If you had a 21% return 1 year, but your 3-year batting average is in the fives, well, they had a big loss in 2022, 17.54. It was down a lot more than that in the mid-year, but it ended up down 17.54. So when you put that math to it, a 17.5% return takes about 21.25 to get back to even, and that's why their 2-year return was kind of a zero. So being greedy doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make money. Being aggressive doesn't mean you're necessarily going to make money. You have to be smart. You have to have a portfolio managed for return and then also managed for risk protection. So I see this a lot, and in the year 2000, I saw a lot of people still fully loaded on the tech side, and they lost a bunch of money.
I notice that when people are greedy, they're really never satisfied because they always think there's something better down the road.
Yep.
So that's why it's really critical, Craig. I think when you say you've got to have a plan, you got to know what's your benchmark. What are you really trying to, what's your hurdle rate? What do you need to get consistently over time? So then you can have peace and not feel like you're always missing out. Because, it's like my mom's always said, there's always going to be someone richer than you. There's always going to be someone prettier than you. You've got to see what you have and work with what you have.
There's nobody prettier than you.
Thank you.
I was waiting for that one.
Wow.
All right. So back to seriousness. Many analysts are saying that we're standing at the intersection of hope and fear. So just think about what that means for a minute as we're continuing to talk.
So one of the other emotions about investing is fear, Craig.
Right.
You just talked about fear. So what is it that drives people? What are you seeing when people are driven by fear and the mistakes they might make in their portfolio?
Well, the television loves it. Absolutely love fear and greed. So, when things are going terrible, the panic arises. I'm losing all my money. I'm not going to be able to make it. Everything that I work for is going away. So much negative information, and it just gets people in fear mode. And so they react emotionally rather than logically. Yeah, rationally is a better word. Yeah. It's easy to think you can lose all of your money, but, and here's my but, if you design your investment approach properly, you don't need to be afraid. First, have enough money in low or no risk investments so that, you have 2 or 3 years of what you're going to need, especially when you retire, if we're talking about that, and things that can't go boom, so the definition of that. Those are short-term treasuries, money market type accounts, CDs, things that are kind of boring, but that's okay. Boring works for some of your money. Some. You also need a portion of your investment portfolio to generate consistent income. So let's talk about where you get income from. Dividend-paying stocks, most of those companies, not all of them, but most of them pay quarterly dividends. So you get a check every quarter, every 3 months. Bonds. Well, I like bonds. Bonds are easy to understand. I buy it, it's going to mature, and it pays me usually 2 times a year. So if I'm getting a couple of payments a year from my bonds, if I'm getting 4 payments a year from my stocks, now I'm starting to see it, and understand it. There's some other tools in there too, like we love structured income notes. Why? Because we can dictate the terms. We can control more of the corners. But if you do a structured income note, at least with us, what you're going to have is a monthly paying vehicle, something that writes you a check once a month that goes either into your account or eventually ends up in your checking account somewhere, and very consistent. Income annuities, you have to bring these up because they have a place. You can set yourself up with something that's going to pay you income, usually monthly, for the rest of your life. It's hard to say that these days. I can't promise you that the stocks will be there. I can't promise you that interest rates are going to continue to stay high. But if you do one of these income annuities, check in the mail, sort of like a pension. So get it all worked out. So in order to outpace inflation and have money that's going to be available for the much older you that's going to be out there, a portion of your investment portfolio really should be in assets earmarked for long-term investing. That's the definition of stocks. Maybe investment real estate, things that might go down in 1 year, but over, say, a 5-year window, you typically make good, solid returns that are consistent there if you give it enough time. The volatility is always in 1 year. You don't know what's going to happen over the next 12 months. So as you're looking at your portfolio, those components should all be there rather than just saying, I hope I bought a good one or something like that.
Well, let's talk about one more emotional aspect of investing, and that is the hope. You just used. We have several people that have come in and hope they were able to retire, and that's why we sit down and actually do a plan with them, Craig, and show that there's a roadmap and a path to get them where they want to be. But also recently we've had people, long-term clients that said, I think I'm ready to retire in the next, 6 months. Can we just look at things to make sure I'm making the right decision? I can think of...
That's fun.
I can think of a man and a woman right now, and it's top of mind. You sat down with, I'm going to call her Judy. But, she came in, she was tired of being in the health profession, and she was like, can I retire, right?
Yeah.
And you actually went through, were there any eye-opening moments, or everything was good? Or?
I'll tell you what it was. This lady retired about 3 or 4 years ago, and then she got nervous and went back to work. I think she got bored too. And now, literally, she is just retired. And we sat through this again. And I said, you can do this. It's 100% probability in every single thing we ran. So how did she feel? She's still afraid. She still had fear. So I don't know what to say about that other than, once you have seen the numbers and they ran and you have high probabilities of success, you should feel very confident.
And the other gentleman, real quick, he was retired trying before Medicare was going to come into play, but he had worked everything out, and we sat down and we had the roadmap of where he was going to pull money until those consistent outside income sources were coming into play, Social Security and Medicare.
Without a plan, though, he would have taken Social Security at 62.
Right.
And so I'm like, no, you have this money for retirement. Let's use that first and let you get a much more consistent, higher growth on your basically guaranteed income.
We were talking about emotions and investing, guys. We went through greed and fear and hope. Let's talk a little bit about pride. One of the big things that we all seem to do is like let pride get in our way. It's like, well, I can figure this out, or I don't need anybody to help me. And
pride goeth before the fall?
Yeah,
that's what they say.
Exactly right.
That's right.
Well, right now people are very confident. Why? Because over the last 3 or 4 months, everything has worked. Usually from the bottom of a market, which we had at the beginning of 2023. When things go up, you get very confident, and you're feeling a little pride that your skill set's pretty high.
Sure.
Or is it just the market? I've noticed that timing is important. They say you can't time the market, but I have noticed that if you start near the bottom of a market and the thing goes up, you tend to do better than if you start at the top of a market and hope that it stays up. I'm just saying that. But
right.
I see someone look, for example, at their accounts. Maybe they have investments that have gone up a whole lot, and they're saying, wow. And they don't really see that investment perhaps is topped out and is now starting to go down because the percentage is good. I'm not saying necessarily a stock like Apple, but Apple's down about 12% this year. You don't really look at that because that's a monster. That's a great one.
Yeah.
But, that's a percentage to pay attention to. It's gone up, and now it's kind of sliding back a little bit. Pay attention. I guess the way to overcome all of these things is a well thought out plan. If you have a good financial plan, it's going to include planning to minimize taxes. Let's talk about taxes for a minute. Let's say that you have a big estate and you have a lot of real estate in there. Well, if you decided that you were going to sell investment property number 1 and buy investment property number 2, and you didn't really understand that you could swap them, you paid some taxes. Well, could you avoid them? And the answer is yes, but we have to kind of swallow our pride a little bit and consult tax advisors, a financial planner. We're way to the certified financial planner side, but whatever you believe in, those are things that you should probably pay attention to so that you work with somebody that can give you the extra advice above where your skill set is. Another thing, estate taxes. Now, the Tax and Job Act of 2017 is due to sunset, potentially creating more expenses for passing your estate along. At least that's what the law says. So I can read, and that's what it says. I talked to some attorneys, and they say, they'll never go back and do that. And others are preparing for it, which is right. We will find out because that ends at the end of 2025. We'll find out. So, when you look at your estate, for example, it's not just your money. It's your real estate, it's your personally owned life insurance, any asset that you have ownership in. So make a plan and work the plan to make sure that, you might be proud of it, but let's make sure you pass it without having to create any more taxes and let the government take more than their fair share, I guess is the way to say it. So,
and I will say too, think of an athlete. Most athletes have a coach working with them, holding them accountable, giving them skills, watching their performance, giving them critique. A financial advisor is very similar. Can the athlete do some things on their own and compete on their own? Sure. But are they maximizing their performance? Are they really going to get as much out of their body and their swing if you're a golfer if you don't have that coach alongside you or that financial advisor alongside of you? So sometimes it takes a little bit of humility to say, I think I know a lot. I know a lot about my profession. I'm a great engineer. I'm a great teacher. I'm a great doctor. I'm a great nurse. But this is a little bit beyond my current skill set, and I don't maybe know all the ins and outs of it. And that's the reason why you actually pick up that phone and give a financial advisor a call. And if that is resonating with you, I really kind of challenge you to kind of swallow hard and just text us, say, I'm ready to get started. 336-448-1086. Don't let pride get in your way, because not everybody knows everything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, call or text. Don't forget, you can call or text, right? So 336-448-1086. Give me one more here on guilt.
I guess in the context of what we do, you'd be talking about making a financial mistake.
Right.
You bought Commodore computer instead of Apple, right? You can't go back. So That's the truth. You can only move forward. So feeling bad about a past financial mistake solves absolutely nothing. Every day, you got to get up and do the very best that you can to help yourself. So I think seeing a certified financial planner who can define your goals and be a partner for you to consult will help rather than going it alone. I mean, that's where people make their mistakes when you don't have good counsel. If you are going into the tax world and you say you're going to sell something like an investment piece of real estate, you should consult your tax professional, a good tax planning CPA. If you are going into design a will and you want to make sure things pass the way they're supposed to, don't go see the CPA. Go see the estate planning attorney, but let it coordinate. You know, financial planners, a lot of times the CFP is supposed to be the quarterback to be able to say, you need for us to go see your tax person. You need us to go see your estate planning person, rather than just saying, I know what to do. I'll write this down on a piece of paper, put it in a drawer, and estates are solved. You know, let's make sure that we do it right. And that's how you approach it with good counsel.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.